The Mallrat from Beverly Hills, better known as Jubilation Lee, was introduced in the 244th issue of Uncanny X-Men. This firecracker became the youngest member of the X-Men team under the mentorship of Wolverine, and quickly became a fan-favorite character. While she's popular for her pyrokinetic powers, there's so much more to her, and today we'll look into what makes Jubilee such a bright character. Before we get into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
With the friends of humanity, who needs enemies?
She's a vampire. In the Marvel Universe, you get to see a lot of superheroes and their antagonists, and these antagonists range from deranged scientists to undead creatures of the night. While it's true that the vampire lore of the Marvel Universe does not get explored beyond the realm of Blade, X-Men managed to get quite a few vampires added to their list of troubles. The most notable of them happens to be Zarus, Dracula's son. Other than involving Deadpool to get him a wife, which did not go well, Zarus caused drama with the X-Men group as well. When Jubilee and Pixie were hanging out in San Francisco, grabbing some lunch under Zarus' command, a biological attack was launched on them. This was a major plot that brought the two otherwise separate species together. A vampire who was biomedically engineered exposed himself in the middle of the food court. Owing to the sunlight, the vampire exploded all over the people around him, covering them in his bioengineered blood. Jubilee also ended up getting covered in his blood. This blood carried a virus that gave her, along with the rest of the victims, vampire-like traits. On top of that, there was an emerging thirst that they needed to quench real quick. This thirst pushed Jubilee to seek out Zarus himself, and that is when we learn that he actually planned all of this. He intentionally made sure Jubilee was at the center of this attack, because he wanted the closest person to Wolverine under his control. When Jubilee showed up to him in the middle of the night, Zarus was more than happy to bite her and turn her into a complete vampire. This gave her the cool powers that we usually associate with vampires, such as super strength, faster reflexes, etc. But this also meant that she carried the same weaknesses that vampires usually do. This can be a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how you look at it. Personally, I saw this as a win because now she was this super cool undead pyrokinetic. How is that not the coolest thing ever?
Leave Rose alone!
She can turn herself into mist. If you're into a lot of folklore, then you must have heard the whole thing about how vampires have the ability to turn themselves into a swarm of bats. When it comes to Jubilee, she can turn herself into something, but it ain't bats. Let me explain. As we've previously discussed, Zarus bit Jubilee and turned her into a complete vampire, which led to her raging. Her personality changed, and she had no qualms about attacking her old friends. But still, Wolverine, Cyclops, and the rest of the group were not going to let her stay this way. So Cyclops made a big brain move and got back Dracula, Zarus' father. Zarus had actually defeated Dracula and taken over control of the vampiric nation. Now that the OG vampire was back, Zarus was easily defeated. As a thank you for bringing him back to life, Dracula allowed Jubilee to go home with the X-Men. Despite his hatred for vampires, Logan insisted on staying with Jubilee as she worked on getting adjusted to the new changes, powers, and vulnerabilities. To curb the transformation, Jubilee was given Wolverine's blood, hoping that his healing factor would somehow manage to help her out physiologically. The healing factor from Wolverine's blood gave Jubilee a healing factor of her own, which restored her previous personality and reduced the natural vulnerabilities she faced. But her mental state was delicate, and she did not feel quite heard by everyone around her. At one point, she ran away from the treatment center where she was kept. While on the run, she met a vampire lady in a bar and became quick friends. But this friendship took a dire turn when the woman framed Jubilee for murders of at least 100 immigrants, and then kidnapped her and teleported her to a separate dimension. In this unknown dimension, with nothing by her side, Jubilee had only her wits to depend on. In order to survive, she somehow managed to trigger something within her that actually takes vampires years to learn. She became Mist. This is a state where Jubilee can depolarize herself, escape from any injury, and travel undetected. Emma Frost, despite being quite a knowledgeable woman herself, could not understand where Jubilee managed to get this power. Emma theorized that either this mist form was because of her vampiric nature, or could be the result of drinking Wolverine's blood. This power was a tough one to master, but once she gained full control over it, Jubilee was unstoppable. How can she survive sunlight? Given that Jubilee turned into a vampire, and that the vampire who turned her into one literally exploded like a bomb because of the midday sun, we can safely conclude that Jubilee is going to get toasted if she steps out in the sun. But my fellow comic book fans, you've probably noticed that Jubilee can very well go out in the sun and not turn into dust. Why is that? Well, I'ma tell you. Although it is known that sunlight can kill or at least harm vampires, when it came to Jubilee, things were different, and this was mostly because of the treatment that she was undergoing with the help of Wolverine's blood. The blood-based therapy that was designed for Jubilee required daily transfusions of Wolverine's blood, and this allowed his healing factor to work with her healing factor and make it stronger. With a better healing factor, Jubilee was able to go out in the sunlight. Obviously, she was not in intense sunlight because her healing factor was not quite on par with Wolverine's, but if it's not too intense, Jubilee can surely go out there and kick some villain ass. Once she joined the Forgiven, she started wearing an amulet that protected her from the sunlight as well. She has a ghost mode. Jubilee's suit has quite a few cool features. I mean, you have to give it to her. An amulet that can keep her safe from the sunlight? That's pretty cool. But you know what else is cool? Her ghost mode. Well, technically there's no official name for it, but Jubilee refers to it as a ghost mode, so we too shall call it that. Do you know how Kitty Pryde can turn herself almost ghostly and walk through stuff? Well, I mean to say that just like Kitty Pryde's mutant abilities allowed her to be intangible and undetected, Jubilee's suit, once in ghost mode, turned her that way as well. This, paired with her mist ability, is a recipe for sweet victory, and none of you can tell me otherwise. Psychic attacks are not for Jubilee. Sentinels are a threat to mutants, that's for sure, but in my eyes, I would have to say that the most dangerous and threatening people in the X-Men universe are the telepaths. I mean, just think about it. Someone can simply saunter into your mind, juggle, delete, and change up your memory according to their will, and you have no agency over yourself. It's almost like your body is no longer your own. Tell me something more terrifying than that. I bet you can't. I mean, Storm is an extremely powerful character, but even she fell victim to this type of telepathic invasion. But not Jubilee. You see, despite not being a telepath herself, Jubilee's mind naturally possesses a defense against telepathic attacks. She has psionic shields in her brain that have been there since she was born. These shields protect her from any type of psychic attack, and on top of that, they prevent her from being detected by any other telepath who might be on the lookout for her. These psionic shields effectively make her mind slippery, and unless the telepaths know exactly what to look for, they'll never be able to infiltrate or control her mind. She can generate and absorb fireworks in her body. Jubilee has a power known as lumikinetic explosive light blasting. As the name suggests, this power allows her to control both light and the energy aspect of the light that is hence produced. Jubilee can create tiny globules of energy with a snap of the finger. These globules are unique and can vary in power and intensity, so when they explode, the results may vary. Sometimes you might get to see a fireworks show with bright, colorful sparkles that will soothe you to your core. Other times, the explosion may be so bright that it can temporarily blind a person. Jubilee was seen exercising the power of detonation, which can easily smash a tree or metal object into dust. That is how powerful Jubilee can be when she wants to be. On top of that, she can easily absorb power from the fireworks that she creates around her with no issues. Recycle and reuse is the motto for Jubilee.
Nice shot.
What will happen if she unleashes her full power? You would think that Jubilee's lumikinetic power's reach is just to this extent. But oh boy, if you did think that, you'd be very, very wrong. Turns out that this power is just the novice form of her true power. Jubilee has always been a powerhouse, and we get to see that explored in the 5th issue of Exterminators. Here, Jubilee helps Dazzler get revenge on their kidnapper, Alex, who also turns out to be Allison's ex. This fight was brutal, and during this do-or-die situation, Jubilee unlocked the biggest source of power in her, which stunned the villains and the readers alike. As we already know, Jubilee can create pyrotechnic plasmoids. These are little bubbles of energy that she can control to a tremendous degree. Her precision with this power is enough for her to attack a tiny part of the human brain, simulating the effects of a stroke. Now, when she was facing off the Collector, she decided to let out a burst of energy that not only blinded her opponents, but also wiped out their ship, as well as her eyebrows. This energy blast is known as the Atomic Blast. While Jubilee did so pretty much like her second nature, Emma Frost, with her abundant knowledge, was able to give us a better, more detailed explanation regarding how Jubilee was able to create this blast in the first place. Turns out, Jubilee's control over the emissions runs far deeper than you would think. She can control her handy-dandy plasmoids to a subatomic degree. She can easily detonate matter at the atomic level. When she's charging up for this attack, her whole body grows translucent, and all of her cells become invisible. In the blink of a panel, Jubilee turns into a glowing skeleton. With every single cell of her body vibrating with energy, Jubilee can create this atomic blast. This blast was so powerful that it was seen from Earth, which truly goes to show just how blinding this blast was. She also gets the crown of being the most destructive mutant with this power of hers. Jubilee was pulled out of this blast by magic, and while she found it was really cool, I don't know if I quite like Jubilee looking like Mr. Clean, now that she's blasted all of her hair away as an aftermath. Obviously, given the nature of this attack, it's safe to conclude that she does not use this power often. Jubilee knows the limitations of her powers, and she only used them when she was fighting in outer space, with an abundance of space for her to blast away. This would be quite the effective power move to use if Jubilee learned how to do it in a closed space, or how to give her usual plasmoids this type of destructive nature. She can hypnotize humans and mutants. Jubilee is a jack of all trades in my eyes. Despite her mutant powers being related to pyrokinetics and lumikinetics, it's fascinating how Jubilee has a touch of telepathy in her power roster. Other than the psionic shields that I've already mentioned, Jubilee has shown that she has the ability to hypnotize people if she wishes to. She does not use these powers often, but we've seen this at play once. She uses this ability back when she was rampaging around the town as a vampire. She used hypnosis to lure a poor farmer boy close enough that she could bite him. It is definitely one of the vampiric powers, and it certainly affected her way more when she didn't quite have her dark urges under control. Once she got control over those powers, with the help of her blood-based therapy that the X-Men team designed for her, we didn't see this ability at play, although it would be nice to see this power return in her future adventures. She can turn Wolverine into a vampire. See, when Zaras launched the attack on Jubilee, he did so because he knew that Jubilee being kidnapped would certainly result in Logan showing up right at his doorstep. Logan was the one he wanted in his new vampire assault team to make them unstoppable. So when Jubilee showed up with a thirst to quench, Zaras did not waste a moment turning her into a complete vampire. Now that Jubilee was a vampire, she remained with Zaras, accepting her dark side. But the X-Men team had no idea about that. Cyclops assumed that Jubilee was kidnapped and held hostage, so he sent over Wolverine to break through Zaras' forces and get Jubilee back. Zaras had well expected that, and he had her on standby, awaiting Logan's arrival. When he did finally arrive, Jubilee was the one who bit him to turn him into a vampire. Surprisingly enough, Jubilee's bite was strong enough to overpower Wolverine's healing factor, and this led to his transformation being completed. With Jubilee being the one to bite him, Logan was now effectively under Jubilee's command. So things were not looking so good. This led to Cyclops and Zaras having a talk, during which we learned about Zaras' long-term plan. The man wanted to turn the whole of the mutant legion into vampires, to create an unstoppable population. Cyclops obviously refused, and this led to a full-out war between them. This is where we get the major plot twist that even I was not ready for. Remember how I said that Jubilee's bite was strong enough to overpower Wolverine's healing factor? Well, it turns out Cyclops had already anticipated this move would be taking place, so he had designed specific nanites to suppress Wolverine's healing factor, to make it seem like Wolverine was lost to the other side. This bamboozle took Zaras and me both by surprise. As you all know, Logan and the X-Men team succeeded in stopping Zaras and saving Jubilee. While sure, the nanites suppressed Logan's healing factor to a degree, I have to give props to Jubilee for being able to turn someone into a vampire, even though she turned into a vampire herself only a day or two ago. She can fly without using her mutant powers. Jubilee is a gift that just keeps on giving, honestly. Despite her mutancy, she's proven herself to be a jack of all trades over and over again. Did you know that this girl could fly? She literally has no mutation that can allow her to fly, but she can! This is all thanks to super tech. See, Jubilee managed to get her hands on some of Wizard's tech. She incorporated them into her costume, and now thanks to the anti-grav tech, she can fly. And when I say fly, I don't mean levitate. She can actually fly. She can propel herself through the air at great speeds. The lowest speed she can reach happens to be 100 miles per hour, and thanks to her suit, she can breathe comfortably while flying at such a high speed. She can control animals. With her transformation into a vampire, Jubilee ended up with quite a diverse set of powers that gave her character a bit of spice. You have her mist form and her hypnotizing abilities, and on top of that, it turns out she can control animals. If I had to theorize, I would say it was because of the vampiric abilities as well, but nothing has been confirmed. We see this power of hers at play when she goes on a camping trip with Logan and Shogo. When camping, you never know what type of animal you will run into, and there's no guarantee that you will only come across harmless ones. When it came to these guys, their path crossed with those of a pack of feral wolves. They were trespassing through the wolves' territory, and things were about to get really messy real soon. But before they did, Jubilee showed up. With her newfound abilities, she was able to take control of the pack and become their alpha member, ensuring her safety as well as that of her teammates. Such a handy power to have. However, regarding this power, we don't know if she can control or lead any other animals. But I, for one, am excited to see Jubilee's Beastmaster rendition. She has a lot of fighting styles. It's no secret that Jubilee had a rough childhood, but I believe all aspects of her childhood, both the traumatic bits and the rest of it, made her such an exciting character to follow. When she was a young girl, Jubilee was expelled from gymnastics. As she joined the X-Men, Jubilee practiced her hand-to-hand combat skills along with her stealth, agility, and investigative techniques. Do you remember that Jubilee was merely a teen when the X-Men found her? But with regular practice and her natural talent, Jubilee soon became one of the most skilled fighters on the team. She was a teenager when she went up against the Hand. Yes, the same group of ninjas from Elektra. And guess what? She survived it. That's not something that a lot of people can boast about. As a superhero, if you look at Jubilee's fighting style, you will see that she often incorporates her acrobatic skills to gain the upper hand in fights. After being turned into a vampire, her speed and reflexes increased tenfold, which only enhanced her martial arts skills. Jubilee also showed an innate talent for swordsmanship. She was trained by Wolverine and Raizo Kodo, and when she faced off against Lord Deathstrike, she was competent enough to defend herself. Along with all of these, she was trained by both Professor and Emma Frost to shield her mind better from telepaths. So trust me when I say this, it will not be easy to defeat Jubilee in combat, mental or physical.
Consider 'em toast.
Marvelous verdict. Jubilee is a character of many colors. I believe that if there's one character that a lot of young readers can look up to, someone to whom they can relate, it has to be Jubilee. She's fun-loving, energetic, and adorable. But when she goes into her battle mode, she becomes a beast. Jubilee is an absolute unit, with her huge roster of powers, which vary from lumikinesis to telepathic shields. I have to say that she's one of the young characters in the comics who shows the most potential. If the writers decide to explore her character and test the bounds of her power a bit more, I believe we, as the audience, would get quite the treat. It's sad to say that we are yet to see Jubilee in her full glory on screen, but I'm hopeful that soon enough we will. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone!